All right. So before we start the conversation, can you please go ahead and introduce yourself? Aarush, you start.
Hi, I'm Aarush. I lead Evals here at Groq, and I also build Upwind, which is an open source eval framework that I just demoed.
Hey guys, Gregg, co-founder and CEO of a company called Alloy Automation. We're an integration platform. We started out life as an iPaaS, and more recently have taken all the integrations that we have on our platform and made them into MCP servers.
Cool. Hi, I'm Gourav. I'm head of information security and IT at Upwind Security. We are the S in the MCP.
Yay, security. All right, so I want to start the conversation with you, Gregg. And can you share a little bit how you are seeing connectivity layer among enterprise evolving in this era of AI?
Yeah, I mean, so as I said before, we started out life as an iPaaS, right? So as an integration platform, and so before obviously AI, we were powering a whole bunch of different platforms like Amazon and Best Buy and all these different systems that are basically looking to connect to a whole myriad of different applications. And so how we're now, I would say, in many ways, repositioning our business is how do we actually support all of the companies that are now building agents, right, with MCP. And so to that end, as I said before, we basically have retrofitted all of our connectors as MCP servers. And I mean, I think it's absolutely critical, right? As we're talking to folks, I mean, we're seeing this from literally everyone in the industry, whether you're an enterprise, whether you're an SMB company. I mean, literally everyone is building an agent, and they're all looking to use MCP. So we see it as a very universal need, and obviously connectivity is the most important, or one of the most important, at least I think, components of that.
So tonight we saw a bunch of demos, and I think some show like more advanced and sometimes less advanced, but at the end of the day, it's all calling REST APIs. How do you see this playing? These two mechanisms, REST API used to be kind of like the only way forward, and how is this shifting?
Yeah, I mean, I think the death of REST APIs is greatly exaggerated, right? Like REST APIs aren't actually going anywhere, and I think probably the best way to think about that is that many MCP servers today are literally built on top of REST APIs, right? So like they're not going anywhere anytime soon. And also, like, you have to keep in mind that in many ways, many applications are not going to always be agentic, right? Like obviously we see agentic as very, very important, and like there will be more and more agentic solutions and applications out there in the future, and it will become ubiquitous. But people will still need to do deterministic things, and they will still just want REST APIs, right? So I don't see REST APIs really going anywhere, frankly. I think there's a world, and the direction the world is headed in, so to speak, is REST APIs and MCP will live side by side.
Mm-hmm. So, we are speaking about this agent speaking to this deterministic system, but do you see what's the next stage? Like, are we speaking about agent to agent? We've seen this, term emerging. Is it already happening? Is it like kind of a pipe dream? Like, where are we here on the spectrum?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot of talk about agent to agent. I think it's early. I mean, I think everyone acknowledges it's early, right? What we're seeing is, I think, a lot of companies racing just to get something agentic out, for better or for worse, right? And I think that it's a great opportunity if you're building, obviously, in the agentic space. At the same time, many companies, at least that we talk to, like they don't have their strategy figured out, right? So they're evaluating all these technologies at the same time, and they're trying to figure out like what to do exactly. So I think directionally where it's going, yes, obviously, like we're going to have a digital workforce, I think, or an agentic workforce, and most likely agent to agent is absolutely critical for that, right? Because if you have 1,000 agents in your workforce, like you need obviously ability to talk to them. But I don't think we're quite there yet, frankly.
Gourav, like how speaking about adoption, how do you see this adoption shaping out when it comes to security? Is it an afterthought? Is it something that companies are really considering, from the get-go when they are putting this the new system in place? Like, can you share a little bit about what you are seeing?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's afterthought for sure. Just like we have seen early in the cloud days, that people decided to move to cloud, all their infra to the cloud, and then we started seeing data incidents, and then later on all the security emerged after that. It's maturing now. I think we are in the era which is transforming. People wants to move fast, they want to develop quickly, they want to ship their product quickly. So definitely security is afterthought, but I think it's catching up pretty quickly too this time.
Okay, so what do you think, like, it's like, you said it's an afterthought, like what are like the biggest issues that you are seeing, like the point where companies should pay attention and they are not?
Yeah, I think if you look at the proactive and reactive approach, if you really break it down, the first problem is visibility. How many of people can tell me that, hey, I have X number of MCP servers running in my environment? What kind of data they're getting trained on? How many people have access to that data? What is ingress, outrest? What are the calls that's made on them? Stuff like that. It's pretty standard security principles like least privileges. Basically, all the standard security concepts applies here, but it just needs tooling that can facilitate all that procedure, all those things.
Mm-hmm. So we were just speaking about agent to agent, which is interesting because security so far was mostly applied to deterministic system, right? But now we are entering an era where an agent could function like a deterministic system or not, right? So how should you think about your security policy? Do you still build them for software or for software that could behave like a human?
I think the way we do enterprise security is we are a function that is supporting business, we are enabling business to work, but at the same time securing them, right? So we are basically, think of us as a seat belt. When you drive car too fast, we are here as a seat belt to make sure that you arrive safely, right? That's the whole concept. But A to A, I think, is really upcoming. But think about the identity of an agent. Right? There will be thousands of agents that one agent is going to talk to. How are you going to identify that who's talking to whom? Can you really trace it back? Like if something bad happens, can you really trace it back to its origin, right? Another thing that we should really think about is that all the tools which are available to us are also available to the attackers, right? They're also building MCP servers. They're also using A2A protocols. And I mean, yesterday I was reading a news from Anthropic itself that they have started blocking people who are trying to write like malicious code through Anthropic, right? So, but that's happening, and there are a lot of other models which can be used for that.
Gregg, how do you see like this security component being mixed in the connectivity layer? Is there some, something shifting in this space that, echoes what Gourav just shared?
Well, I think just more and more observability is really critical, right? So like, and obviously folks are building in the observability space for MCP, but there's the spec itself, there's a lack of observability across the board. So like that would certainly be something that we need to work on across the board. And I think also authentication, right? So a lot of people are just basically tacking on OAuth to MCP and just calling that like authentication. Whether that is the solution long term or not, I mean TBD. But that's what's happening right now.
So we just spoke about visibility here, security, but also visibility can be very important when it comes to performance. And I think you touched base a little bit about this in your demos, Aarush, but these models are used across the stack, if I may say, in companies, from employees using them to help them do their work, also embedded in products. But when it comes to choosing the best model for the tasks, how are companies currently going about that, and what is broken about it?
I think evals have become more and more important, and companies have been thinking a lot more about trying to select models based off of data in the past few months, but I still think there's a very long way to go. As Gregg mentioned, I think there are two big ways to catch these security issues, right? One is through observability, and one is through more rigorous authentication, and that's testing and prompt, right? And you want to be able to learn on that, and you want to be able to diagnose and fix issues while on the fly. And I think Ruby is doing a lot of good work there as well. But the best case scenario, which is not always going to happen, but it's always good to try to optimize for it, is to catch these issues before they end up in production, and that's where evals come in. I think there aren't as many red teaming evals for agents as I'd like to see out there, but I think I would suspect that a lot of those are going to come out within the next few months, just to test how good models are at being robust to jailbreaks and adversarial testing. I think it's also pretty important for larger scale applications for companies to build their own evals for stress testing models and making sure that they can handle all the edge cases and the possibility of malicious attacks so that they're not like hoodwinked into doing something that's incorrect, and also building robust guardrails around it.
Have you, open question, like seen, is there any like eval that are specific to security? Is it something that already exists?
I think we've seen a few evaluations for security, but that's more about bad actors trying to elicit behaviors from like the models themselves. I think that's a huge part of what like companies like Anthropic and OpenAI have been doing with their open source and like also private red teaming evals. But we haven't seen a lot of great evals for attacking systems that are built on top of these models. And I think that's an open question that a lot of labs that I know of are trying to solve with more robust evals in that space. I would expect to see a lot more research in that space within the next 3 to 6 months.
Gourav, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
I think this one is not working.
I think I agree with the analysis. I haven't even seen a lot of red team analysis, but I would say that adversarial testing is one of the main things that should happen on the model before you implement it into your production environment.
Okay. So, you know, GPT-5 was a very controversial launch, and I think people are starting to realize, or at least it's more spread, that the latest and most expensive model isn't really the best. So how can, you know, eval play a role here in further educating or informing, you know, teams to pick the right model for the right task?
Yeah, I think evals are a double-edged sword. There are the very standard open source evals that everybody like pays attention to and cares about. If you look at the artificial analysis leaderboards, a lot of the industry standard benchmarks like Math 500 or MMLU or SciCode. But the issue is that a lot of companies or labs will optimize for those evals in particular. They won't train on the test set, but they will, of course, build very powerful like synthetic data flywheels around those specific evals to achieve higher scores on them. And that sort of nullifies the purpose of using these evals as like a good metric of how good a model is. I think for companies who want to care about the performance of their systems and how the models fit into that, it's always a great idea to create your own eval. I'm a huge proponent of taking whatever system you're trying to build and figuring out what the best case scenario is and the worst case scenario and building evals around both of them. And basically going and benchmarking what you think are the most interesting models or models you think would fit in that system. And the results may surprise you. A lot of our customers are actually seeing that OpenAI's GPT-OSS model is outperforming GPT-5 in a lot of their use cases. And even if it isn't, it's always a trade-off between quality and cost. And I think a lot of open source models balance that a lot better than the frontier ones do.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious in the room, who has already either ran their own eval or write their own evals? One person, okay. Yeah, that's
a small crowd.
So could you, like, I think it's not an easy thing, and I think that's why I think it's interesting we discuss this tonight. So if some people in the audience want to get started, like, what would be the next step? You know, I think writing an eval is like could be intimidating, or you are not sure where to start. Like, what would be like the first step here?
I think the first thing to do is just run an eval and see how an eval works. Look through the data. Shameless plug, but I think OpenBench is a great way to do that. It's a simple pip install command, and then you can get started with running a bunch of industry standard benchmarks. And I think that will give people a good idea of how simple evals can be. Because a lot of the industry standard evals are literally just a bunch of multiple choice questions, and looking at what the model responds with is A, B, C, or D, and that can even provide a signal for how good a model is for a specific use case. So based off of that, you can kind of get an idea of how these evals sort of work, and then hopefully build your own. I think the ideal scenario is we have some form of agentic systems that can build evals for specific use cases. That's something that we're actively planning to add to OpenBench sometime within the next few months, and hopefully that will add a little. It will make evals a little more accessible to the rest of the community.
Great. Okay, now I have a hot question for all of you. What do you believe company will regret about AI in 2026? Gourav, you start.
I guess, I think we are moving too fast in this space, and security is afterthought, I guess. That's one of the biggest things, I guess. Later on, we will see we are not threat modeling the entire ML space or AI space or MCP space properly. We're just doing it, right? And we're not sanitizing the data. We are not following all the security principles. Everybody has access to the environment. We're not looking at what's going out, what's going on in, and that is something that we'll probably see more incidents around that, and then things will get better from 27 onwards.
I would agree with that, and I mean, frankly, that's much of my opinion as well. What we're seeing is, which is wonderful for business in the sense that like there's again such demand and such interest in agentic, and everyone wants to build an agent. But I think what we're also seeing is many people have not used an agent properly, right? And especially the business people that are who are the ones saying we need to do this, right? Which is kind of ironic, right? And they're basically like there's this huge rush to go implement agents, and it's like, well, you talk to some of these folks, and we're like, okay, well, what do you want to do? And they literally cannot articulate what they actually want to do. They just they know they need to launch an agent, and I mean, conceptually that sounds great, but what does it mean, right? And so, we are a connectivity platform, so we of course the next question we ask is, well, what systems do you want to connect? And they don't know, right? Many of the times, right? So, I think it's essentially my ask to the industry is just take a breather, slow down for a quick second, and think a little bit more about what you actually want to do, formulate a strategy. And I know obviously we're all working on this. Everyone is trying to figure this out. So I imagine this will all be sorted out in the next 12 months roughly. But I think over the next kind of, let's say, 6 to 12 months, that this idea that there really isn't the strategy isn't quite fleshed out will probably continue.
I agree with both of those points. Those are excellent things. I think another one is we are optimizing, and the industry is optimizing for the wrong signals in some way. I guess that's a bit of a reframe of exactly what Gourav mentioned, but we're optimizing for capability a lot, and we're optimizing for certain safety factors, but we are not optimizing for robustness, and we are not optimizing for how these systems behave in the real world. If you look at, there was a famous example of there being an automotive dealership who had an AI agent where you could negotiate with it for a car, and somebody prompt engineered it in a way to give them the car for $10, which is great for the customer, but not exactly great for the dealership. So being able to balance safety and robustness of models with capabilities is something that I think this industry is still very much figuring out. Another example of this is the GPT-4o sycophancy bug. A lot of the signal that OpenAI was optimizing for was just the yes/no from when you get the thumbs up or thumbs down in ChatGPT, which in the end generates more thumbs up. You train a model on that, it generates more thumbs ups, but it also generates a model that's more sycophantic and more likely to encourage people to do things that they shouldn't do, rather than being more aligned or safe.
I think evals also, the way you evaluate it's correct or not, it's only a true false, right? Whereas a lot of things are more of a, not exactly yes no answer. Is there any benchmark that does that?
I think a lot of the industry, it's much easier to build an eval that is has a binary response. But I think there are going to be more and more evals which are have a spectrum of scores and have different metrics that can be broken down, that an eval can be broken down into. But I think it's still very much an open problem, and I haven't seen any ones which I would consider to be very robust in that area.
And similarly on the robustness, So let's say on the same set of tasks, an agent 80% of times it gives you correct answers. If it does not give you answer 10% times and 10% times it's stuck. Are there evals evaluating that, like say MMLU or anything?
I think that's like a model's robustness to, or like calibration, I guess, is something that can be solved by basically running the eval like multiple times.
Yeah, I've seen that people do that.
But I don't think people are treating that with as much respect as they should. A lot of times model authors will cherry pick results by running the same eval multiple times until they get a higher score. But I think that's something that needs more light shine.
Is it something that your eval is planning to incorporate?
Yeah, for sure. A lot of our evals with lower sample counts are the default is to run them multiple times. Like for GPQA Diamond, which is I think 198 samples or something like that. The default is to run each sample 5 times to make sure that you're not just getting a fluke like 3% increase in the model quality.
And
That's 6 questions, right?
what will be the variance in, let's say, in these 5 runs? What is the typical variance that you see? Is it like 80% to 85% difference versus 80 to 81% difference in the lowest and best run?
I think it's usually around a 2 to 3% difference. It really depends on like the model's temperature and its determinism.
The one question that I got immediately thinking about our engineering organization is, what is the percentage of issues that happen in our organization as a result of AI-generated code versus human-generated code? Is that a metric that you're tracking? And assuming that that metric shows the story that I would imagine it tells, don't you think that would create, pushback away from AI-generated code for a lot of these companies going against the narrative of that kind of like prompt-led engineering?
Yeah, so I mean, we are not at this like root least incident management, so that would be earlier. That's not something that we measure as a product, but at the end of the day, like a lot of what the code that's generated by this generative AI is inspired from human, right, like written code. So most of it, a lot of the bugs that we are seeing are similar to what humans would do, right? So I would not say that there would be like a strong pushback because it's generating this like new use cases. There are a few use cases, like few type of new bugs that are emerging, but I would not say it's a lot of them. So I don't see the pushback happening yet. Aarush?
I think this is something that we faced internally at Groq because we're trying to. A lot of our engineers are very AI first, and we like to use tools like Claude Code or like OpenAI's Codex to generate a lot of our code and sometimes entire PRs. But I think that a lot of engineers can get too trusting in these models and can end up YOLOing code that may not be the best for our reliability. But I think the solution to that is more around education, around how to use these tools and how these tools should be checked, and also transparency about which code is AI generated versus not when we're pushing to like an internal repo of some kind. If you look at like Claude Code, it always attributes its PRs or like its commits with co-authored by Claude. And that allows us to, as engineers, provide more of a we pay more attention to those PRs and check them for more bugs because we do trust Claude less than we trust our own engineers' handwritten code.
Very interesting. Yeah, this room. Oh.
Reliability is not high for microphone here.
It's slow. Nope. It's a little bad.
Guten Tag.
Yeah.
So the follow-up question is, we're lots of folks building here cool stuff with MCP. You build cool companies around MCP, and then at the same time, we know that Microsoft, at least, and Anthropic, they're building their own registries that presumably going to centralize a lot of the the hosting of the MCP servers. Like, where does the ecosystem fit in this future where a lot of it gets centralized? Like things like authentication, things like security, and so forth.
You can take my microphone, by the way.
Oh, no, it works now.
Okay.
I want to take this one.
Sure. Well, I think that how we're at least viewing it, right, is very very similar to kind of like the original problem that when we started Alloy that we wanted to solve for was basically there's a whole bunch of APIs out there, and many companies obviously want to launch like integration marketplaces. I mean, this is I'd say the status quo, but obviously that's changing with agentic now. But we came in and said, okay, well, we want to basically be essentially an API registry or essentially an API centralizer in many ways, right? And so we'll manage all the authentication, manage all these things as kind of bundled up one service, and then you purchase our product and get a one-to-many solution. I think that same problem does roughly will still exist with MCP. There may be more centralization that just inherently happens with the industry this time around, but I think that the problem is it's not going away completely. So we feel that there's enough excitement around that to build a business there.
Testing individual tools in the MCP should be easy. How do you guys test like the entire MCP server? So you guys basically set up a agent and configure all the models, all the tools, and just run it 5 times to see how many times it works.
Me or
Anyone.
I mean, what we're doing internally is yes. I mean, we're just basically dogfooding our own product, right? So what we're doing is, we just have built a whole bunch of just agents internally, and we'll just brute force test it. We also have we call it just like an MCP playground basically inside our product where you can just go in and it's a chat experience and you can call these different tools and see how they interact. I think what that's probably taught us is the definitive need for more determinism, because I can't tell you how many demos we have been on where we give it the exact same prompt that worked perfectly well, and it does something. Like I was actually on a call this morning, actually, where I'm sitting with my head of engineering, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to do a demo, guys," and we got on the thing, and the demo just totally doesn't work, and we're like, "Okay." So, but long story short, yes, we have our own playground and whatnot, and we're just testing all the tools manually that way.
Aarush, I think something is coming up on OpenBench and MCP. Are you integrating something?
Yeah, we're going to have a bunch of MCP evals coming out in OpenBench pretty soon to be able to test MCPs and see how to interact with them. I think the main purpose of the evals we're adding to OpenBench is more around testing the models on how they use the MCPs, but that's something we should definitely look into, testing the MCPs themselves and seeing how they work.
I was also curious about the evaluation part. So we basically work in a medical related field. So the evaluation set contains, so once we run the evaluation, you get a nice number at the end, summarized number. Does OpenBench or some other tool supports like drilling down into it? So assume that they are like provided with different specialties. I want to drill down on, okay, I ran the evaluation, the number decreased from, let's say, 0.8 to 0.7. What exactly, basically why did it, can it explain the evaluation bench, that why did it go down?
This is a very, very good question. It is something that we are actively working on, implementing. I have a great disdain for the fact that evals just give you a number and nothing else. Right now, OpenBench has this command called bench view, which you can run, and you can actually open up every single sample and examine every data point within it to see how it works. But that's not what you want. You want to be able to diagnose an eval and compare it with a different one and see what the difference is and like what changed, I guess. We're working on it. We have an internal version. We will launch this very soon.
Like the repo. All right, I think Russ is telling me that we are out of time. So big round of applause for our speaker.